The small town of Maple Creek, nestled amidst rolling hills and picturesque scenery, isn't the kind of place you'd expect to hear sirens blaring in the middle of the night. People here know each other's names, and gossip travels faster than any emergency response. That's why when the fire trucks roared past, their lights flickering like an alarm clock in the night, everyone in town knew something was seriously wrong. Ethan Harper had lived in Maple Creek all his life. At 16, he was the kind of teenager who seemed to straddle awkwardly the line between boyhood and adulthood. Standing in his room, the glow of his computer screen flickered over posters of bands and movies that reflected his eclectic tastes. A knock on his door, loud, hurried, brought his attention away from a digital world to the very real panic in his mother's voice. "Ethan," she called out with an urgency that shook him to attention. "There's a commotion down by the Kelsey place. It's on fire." Ethan's instincts kicked in. Mr. and Mrs. Kelsey were good people, part of the fabric of their tight-knit community. They often babysat kids, a comforting presence known for their open-door weekends and soft-spoken kindness. Without hesitation, Ethan threw on a hoodie, slipping into his sneakers with more urgency than care, and dashed downstairs. His mom was already on her way to see for herself, her face a mask of concern and fear. The chilly night air bit at Ethan's cheeks as he sprinted down Main Street, his heart pounding too loud in his ears for him to register anything beyond the bright flames that licked hungrily at the darkened sky. Neighbors gathered outside, faces illuminated by the eerily beautiful light of destruction. When Ethan arrived, what he saw stole his breath. The Kelsey house, a modest two-story building, was ablaze, the fire crackling with a terrifying vitality. Flames danced through the windows, where once he remembered Halloween decorations and Christmas lights. A sense of hopelessness swept over the crowd, rendering them motionless, fearful of getting too close, and the wailing sirens seemed a lifetime away. Then amid the spectator helplessness, Ethan saw something that spurred him into action. A tiny face, barely visible through the flames, peering from an upstairs window. It was Sammy, the Kelsey's 3-year-old grandson. Panic surged through Ethan like an electric shock. With rescue services still en route and the crowd too stunned to act, Ethan knew there wasn't time to deliberate. He sprinted towards the house, his movements powered by pure adrenaline and impulse. Behind him, someone yelled out, a voice blurring into the chaos around him. But Ethan was already committed, his mind racing through ways to navigate the inferno safely. The heat hit him like a physical force as he approached the front door, smoke billowing in turbulent clouds. "Sammy!" he called out, voice hoarse from smoke and fear. The little boy cried out weakly in response, a sound that nearly undid Ethan. It was a simple sound, yet underlain with so much trust and terror. Ethan found his way inside, the heat unbearable, and in moments that stretched into small eternities, he located the stairs, each step up a battle against suffocating smoke and sweltering heat. Reaching the second floor, he could see Sammy clearer now, clutching a stuffed dinosaur, caught in a scene neither one of them should have been part of. Ethan's survival instincts fought hard with his protective instinct as he moved quickly toward Sammy. "It's okay, Sammy. I've got you," he said, not sure if he was speaking to comfort Sammy or himself. He wrapped the boy in his arms, pulling him away from the window just as a section of roof collapsed behind them with a deafening crash. The way down was harder, each breath a struggle, the air thick and heavy, but Ethan was determined. Emerging into the night once more, clutching the toddler, the cool freshness of the outside world rushed past him in a blissful wave of relief. Cheers erupted around him, seeing the boy safe, but Ethan barely registered them. A moment later, the blur of emergency lights flooded the street, the first responders finally there. Ethan handed Sammy off to a firefighter, and only then did he allow himself to think, to feel the raw intensity of what just happened. But before relief could settle over the crowd or Ethan himself, the atmosphere shifted. An officer, face set with an unreadable expression, approached Ethan. Instead of praise or questions about his well-being, unavoidable words fell. "Son, we need you to come with us." In those moments, confusion rattled through Ethan's senses. The heroic gesture that had just saved Sammy now felt heavy with misunderstanding. Amidst the onlookers, praises tapered into murmurs, in the air filled with a different kind of tension. The officer's words hung in the chilly air, stark against the backdrop of the crackling fire and the wailing sirens. For a moment, Ethan felt as if the world had tilted off its axis. Just moments ago, he'd been the focus of relieved, grateful eyes. Now those same eyes turned perplexed, unsure what to make of this sharp twist in events. What? Why? Ethan stammered, his voice carrying the confusion threading through his mind. The officer didn't directly answer, his eyes softening just slightly. It's protocol, son. Let's just talk this over down at the station. There was a calmness and authority in his voice meant to reassure, but it only heightened Ethan's confusion and budding panic. Mrs. Henderson, the town librarian who'd known Ethan since he was a child, stepped forward from the crowd, her face lined with worry. "What's going on here? He just saved a life," she protested, her voice sharp and incredulous. "It's okay, Mrs. Henderson," Ethan replied, trying to sound composed even while his insides roiled. He didn't want to cause a scene, and part of him hoped this was just a massive misunderstanding. But as the officer gently guided him towards the patrol car, there was a flash of cameras, spectators now turning into impromptu journalists with their smartphones held high. The car ride to the station was surreal. Ethan stared out the window, watching the town slide by, memories flickering through his mind like an old movie reel. The diner where he'd spent summer afternoons with friends, the school playground where he'd marred his knees, all now seemed stained with the tint of impending dread. Inside the station, the atmosphere was altogether different from the chaos and warmth of the night outside. Bright fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the air carried a stale quality that seemed to amplify the tension. The officer directed Ethan to a seat in a small, bland room that smelled faintly of old coffee. "I just don't understand," Ethan said softly, breaking the silence filled only by the distant hum of office activity. "We'll sort this out, don't worry. We just need a couple of questions answered officially," the officer explained, his tone still unreadable. "Someone saw you enter the property before the fire trucks got there, and—" "But I had to," Ethan interjected, his frustration bubbling over. "Sammy was in there. I couldn't just—" His voice caught, the raw emotion of the night's events flaring up. "I get it. Really, I do," the officer said, holding up a placating hand. "But we need to look into everything. Make sure it was safe, the right call, all that." He hesitated and then quietly added, "People are just trying to understand why you went in when it was so dangerous." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, feeling this whole scenario slipping further out of his grasp like sand through fingers. It felt like he was being punished for doing what he hoped was the right thing. A twisting knot of injustice in his stomach. His parents arrived at the station soon afterward, faces etched with a mixture of relief and anger, the latter more directed at the situation than their son. His mother hugged him fiercely, whispering reassurances in his ear, while his father's conversation with the officers became heated, rising above the white noise of the room. The conflict between them churned. No one could quite comprehend why risk and necessity seemed tangled in a web of legal and social scrutiny. Every argument felt like another blow to the fragile membrane holding all of Ethan's feelings together. Guilt, confusion, and anger tumbling over one another. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of explanations, statements, and still more explanations, an understanding was reached. Or at least a tentative truce between the urgency behind Ethan's actions and the protocols wrapping around safety versus recklessness. As Ethan and his parents walked out into the lateness of the night, the relief they should have felt was tempered by the whispering doubt. Even in small towns where everyone knows everyone, lines can blur in unexpected ways. A hero's journey shuffled closely with suspicion, and it left a hollowness gnawing at Ethan. Standing under the stark streetlight, Ethan looked to the familiar faces gathering once again, and neighbors and friends, each one conveying silent support, yet bearing an edge of skepticism, as if processing the new narrative. The night was no longer gentle with its comforting darkness. Instead, it loomed with unanswered questions and hidden judgments. And as Ethan's mind replayed the sequence of events, that single heavy question refused to leave him alone. Had he really done the right thing? And at what cost? As they headed home, the weight of unspoken words and unsaid fears seemed to settle over Ethan's shoulders. The unexpected complexity of his actions in their reception left him silent next to his parents, and he realized with an uneasy heart that this night might haunt him longer than the burn marks scorched into the Kelsey's yard. As Ethan and his parents drove home, silence hung thick in the car, punctuated only by the hum of the tires on the pavement. The house came into view, its comforting glow muted under the weight of the evening's turmoil. Ethan wondered if he could simply wake up in the morning and find that all this had been one anxious dream, woven from the overstimulation of a teenage hero's imagination. Yet as he opened the front door, reality was relentless in its grasp. His mom left briefly, returning with a mug of herbal tea, her way of offering solace. "You'll feel better after some rest," she said, though the words fell lightly, like leaves onto a forest floor, not quite reaching the undercurrent of Ethan's swirling thoughts. Alone in his room, Ethan found himself restless, unable to focus on the familiar objects that should have brought comfort. His phone buzzed, breaking the stillness. A message from Jenna, a classmate and friend since elementary school. "You okay?" The message read, worry crammed into two small words. Ethan typed back a non-committal reassurance, but paused as the phone buzzed again, this time with a link attached. Clicking it, he was directed to a local online forum. Threads of text filled with comments on the night's incident. Most were supportive, the community rallying around him, but a few comments stood out like thorns. There's more to this story than meets the eye. Who knew Ethan was such a risk taker? I heard he has a track record of playing hero. Those remarks unsettled Ethan. Where rumors could lead was a trail he feared to tread, but one particular comment made everything else fade into a blur. The Kelseys had a huge insurance policy. Just saying. Heart thumping, Ethan reread the words. An insurance policy? In Maple Creek, news like this would catch fire faster than gossip itself. And yet he'd heard nothing, not even a whisper before tonight. He had to know more. Navigating back to his conversation with Jenna, Ethan quickly asked, "Do you know anything about this insurance thing with the Kelseys?" Jenna's reply was quick, almost as if she'd expected the question. "Just heard bits and pieces. They upgraded the policy recently. Thought it was odd, but these days, who doesn't want peace of mind, right?" Ethan's mind churned through possibilities. Why had the Kelseys expanded their insurance? It might have been a standard precaution. Adults did things all the time that seemed bizarre to teenagers, he thought. But the timing felt too coincidental, and coincidences were the fortresses behind which Maple Creek's secrets often hid. Deciding he needed air, Ethan slipped out the front door, grateful for the solitude of the night. The cold bit at his cheeks as he wandered down the quiet street, drawn somehow back toward the scene of the fire, the darkness now a blanket of secrecy rather than a canvas of terror. As he approached, Ethan noticed a figure by the Kelsey residence, wrapped in a coat and staring at the charred remains. A halo created by a streetlight casting elongated shadows. Ethan hesitated, the sight unexpected for this late hour. Closer now, he saw it was Mr. Kelsey himself. The older man looked up, eyes meeting Ethan's with an expression that was impossible to decipher. Was it gratitude, or was there something else lurking beneath the surface of familiar eyes? "Ethan," Mr. Kelsey acknowledged, his voice marked by exhaustion. There was warmth there too, or maybe Ethan imagined it. "I'm sorry about your house," Ethan said, unsure what else to convey, feeling the inadequacy of words. Mr. Kelsey nodded but remained silent, gaze drifting back to the ashes that marked so many precious memories now lost. "You did a brave thing tonight," he added finally, though the simplicity of the words held a weight Ethan couldn't quite define. In the pause that followed, Ethan plucked up his courage. "Mr. Kelsey, did you just change anything around here? Like insurance or something?" For a heartbeat, the air tightened between them, a tangible shift as Mr. Kelsey's face flickered through a range of expressions too quick to attribute. settling finally on a half-smile that didn't quite touch his eyes. "Ah, small towns," Mr. Kelsey said softly, as if that were answer enough, leaving Ethan to grapple with the fragments of understanding swirling in the space between them. As he turned to go, laden with more questions than answers, a nagging thought nestled itself in the back of his mind. Had he inadvertently stumbled onto something bigger than one night's heroics could cover? And if so, what did that mean for the truth itself that waited, shrouded within the night? The weight of uncertainty lingered long after Ethan's encounter with Mr. Kelsey. As he trudged back home, the night's chills seemed to seep deeper into his bones. By the time morning broke, a pale sun rising over the still charred skyline of the town, the implications of the fire, and the unsettling talk of insurance policies loomed like storm clouds on the horizon. At school, Ethan found himself the reluctant center of attention. Whispers followed him down hallways, a blend of admiration and suspicion threading through the murmured comments. It was this complex mixture that he found most troubling. How quickly heroism could morph into something oddly resembling notoriety. Jenna sat beside him in homeroom, the usual light chatter replaced by a more somber tone. "People are saying a lot out there," she said, her voice just low enough to avoid drawing extra attention. "You holding up okay?" "Yeah," Ethan replied, though he wished he felt as sure as he sounded. "It's just, everything is different now. Have you talked to Sammy's family or seen them?" Jenna continued, concern creasing her brow. "I tried," Ethan said, shaking his head slightly. "But it seems like they're all caught up in assessments and inquiries." "They're probably just trying to piece it all together," Jenna mused, "with everything that's happened." As the day wore on, teachers offered sympathetic smiles, and classmates gave Ethan more space than usual, unsure whether to celebrate him or keep their distance, lest the drama somehow be catching. After school, Ethan caught up with his parents in the kitchen, the familiar aroma of dinner doing little to ease the tension that lingered. "How was school?" his mother asked, her eyes full of an unspoken concern. "Okay, I guess," Ethan replied, careful to focus on setting the table rather than meeting her gaze. His father chimed in, his voice steady but edged with the same scrutiny Ethan felt all around him. "Anything more from the police or folks around town?" "Nothing concrete," Ethan admitted, aware of the unspoken fear threading their conversations. His parents worried not only for his physical safety, but about the potential repercussions of his actions being misinterpreted. As the evening unfolded, the phone rang, a rare landline holdover from simpler times. When Ethan's mother answered, her expression shifted as nods punctuated her side of the conversation. She hung up, looking concerned yet oddly relieved. "That was the Kelsey's lawyer," she said slowly. "They've asked to meet with us. They want to thank Ethan in person." "Do you think it's a good idea?" Ethan's father interjected, a protective undercurrent in his tone. "I think it could bring some closure," his mother replied, shifting her gaze to Ethan. "But it's up to you, sweetie." Ethan thought for a moment, the invitation offering a chance to unravel some of the tangled threads woven by both real events and the town's woven narratives. "I'll go," he decided. "Maybe it will help clear things up." Later, as he lay in bed, Ethan stared at the ceiling, shadows dancing with the play of light from outside. The night brought its own questions, but perhaps a meeting might provide some of the answers he longed for. Yet amidst this hope, the realization lingered that the smallest meetings could ripple out to change the whole picture. This understanding lay heavy as the night embraced him with its restless silence. Ethan lay awake long after the household had settled into silence, echoes of the day replaying in a loop through his mind. It was odd, he thought, how quickly everything in his life had pivoted around a momentary decision, a leap into a burning house. As sleep finally caught up with him, it came fitful and fragmented, riddled with dreams that danced on the edges of memory and imagination. By morning, he found himself not entirely ready for another round of whispers and looks that seemed to dissect his very actions and intentions. Yet school awaited, and with it the perilous balance between normalcy and notoriety. The first person to approach him was Mr. Olson, his math teacher. A peculiar character known for his fondness toward metaphors that wove through numbers, Mr. Olson was as much a mentor in life lessons as in equations. Today, however, his usual smile was replaced by a more contemplative expression. "Ethan," he called out gently as class ended, gesturing for him to stay behind. The room, emptying swiftly as other students shuffled off to their next class, felt wider somehow, filled with the unspoken. Ethan walked over to Mr. Olson's desk where the older man leaned, arms crossed, surveying him with a thoughtful gaze. "You know, mathematics often mirrors life," Mr. Olson started, his voice the familiar, comforting timbre Ethan had often tuned into during lessons. "The patterns we see, the variables we can't quite predict, they all teach us something." Ethan nodded, unsure what else to say. The metaphor wasn't lost on him, but how could caution its practical application? "I've been hearing a lot around school," Mr. Olson continued, "about heroes and insurance policies and how quickly people draw lines between the two. It's been surreal," Ethan admitted, wringing his hands unconsciously. Mr. Olson sighed, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. "The thing is, when tension runs high, it clouds judgment. People speculate. What's important is you look beyond chatter. Find clarity in your own actions. Does that make any sense?" "Some," Ethan responded, his voice low, "but sometimes I feel like I'm seeing everything from under a layer of fog. I thought I understood what was right, but now—" He trailed off, picking at the threads of an unraveling sleeve. "Life's tricky like that," Mr. Olson said kindly. "But remember, your gut guided you once. Trust it to guide you again." Leaving the discussion with Mr. Olson, Ethan felt something shift within him, a pebble dislodged from a wider internal dam of uncertainty. The decision to meet the Kelseys suddenly felt less daunting, as if the impending conversation was a necessary step in peeling back the layers of complexities that now colored his world. Later that afternoon, Jenna found him by the bleachers where he often hid during lunch when he needed to think. She slouched into the seat next to him, her presence grounded and resolute. "Heard about the meeting with the Kelseys," she said by way of greeting, offering him a slice of her orange. Ethan accepted it, letting the tangy citrus bite wake him from internal musings. "Yeah, today felt like the right day," he said, not entirely believing his words. "Define right day," Jenna teased lightly, though her eyes mirrored a deeper understanding. "Something Mr. Olson said," Ethan explained, "about trusting myself, and I guess I need to hear what they have to say. All this," he gestured vaguely, "might be bigger than just one night." Jenna considered his words before nodding. "That makes sense. If I know anything about you, Ethan, it's that you've got this knack for seeing things through. Whether it's good or complicated," she added with a soft chuckle. They sat quietly afterward, the noonday sun warming them, granting a brief reprieve. But soon Ethan's mind wandered back to the task at hand, to the Kelsey house. Once a warm beacon, now a symbol of so many muddled feelings. When Ethan finally arrived at the temporary lodging where the Kelseys were staying, he was met at the door by Mrs. Kelsey. Her expression shifted through emotions as she led him into the living room, decorated with familiarity despite its temporary nature. "Ethan," she started, sitting across from him, "thank you for coming." "Of course," Ethan replied, though his mind raced ahead to the heart of the matter, the questions unasked. Mr. Kelsey joined them shortly, meeting Ethan's eyes with a steadiness that revealed more than mere pleasantries. "There's been a lot said and heard these past few days," Mr. Kelsey began. My wife and I, we want to clear up some of that." The pause that followed felt like a held breath, as everyone anticipated how those words might unfold. "We upgraded our insurance a month ago, after we'd been approached by someone. But not for any malicious reason, if that's your concern," Mr. Kelsey continued, his voice grave yet reassuring. "We never thought this would happen." Caught between relief and unresolved tension, Ethan soaked in the gravity of the explanation. But amid all the talk, there lingered a seed of doubt only partially uprooted. A phone rang in the background, a shrill note cutting through the tension with an acute reminder of reality's unyielding nature. As the conversation trailed into discussion about rebuilding rather than unraveling, the space filled with echoes of past misunderstandings and future hopes. Ethan left the meeting carrying a buoyancy interlaced with an anchor, the kind of strength drawn from connections and truths not yet fully known, but tentatively trusted. Every step home was accompanied by one underlying promise. He would face what lay ahead with the insight that had already begun to take root within him. Ethan walked home from the Kelsey's temporary lodging with a renewed sense of clarity, though shadows of doubt still intermittently crossed his path, reminding him of the journey he'd undertaken. Conversations replayed in his mind, each one an echo of the murmurings that had once seemed like insurmountable noise. Yet within that noise he had found threads of truth, blurred, tangled perhaps, but unmistakable. The autumn air was crisp, biting at his cheeks and tugging at the edges of his coat. As he approached his house, he noticed familiar figures waiting outside. His parents, Jenna, and even some of his teachers, Mr. Olson included, formed a kind of makeshift welcoming committee, their presence a testament to the community's unwavering support despite the turmoil of recent events. "Everything okay?" his father asked, concern softening the usual firmness in his voice. Ethan nodded, words slipping past the lump in his throat. "The Kelseys explained everything," he said. "I think it'll work out, for everyone." The admission felt like shedding a layer of uncertainty that had clung too tightly since the fire. Jenna stepped closer, offering him a bright, reassuring smile. "See? Didn't I say you'd work it all out?" she teased gently, the sparkle in her eyes conveying so much more than her words. "You might have mentioned that," Ethan conceded with a grin, feeling the last tendrils of tension dissolving. Her belief in him had been a constant source of strength, something he hadn't fully realized until this moment. Mr. Olson chimed in, looking pleased. "Sounds like you've found X in this equation," he quipped, echoing one of his favorite teaching metaphors. Ethan laughed, surprising himself by how light his voice sounded. After a cascade of heavy days, the shared moment with people who mattered lifted him. But the process of understanding, of change, went beyond the immediacy of conversation. In the days following, Ethan noticed subtle shifts within himself. At school, he no longer shrank from whispers or sidelong glances, facing instead the multitude of voices with a newfound sense of calm. Conversations with classmates about the fire no longer revolved solely around his dramatic rescue, but evolved into broader dialogues about safety, community, and prevention. Ethan saw this as an opportunity not just to speak about heroics, but about preparedness and unity. "One person in a blaze can be saved," he reflected aloud during one impromptu discussion with his peers, inspired by his recent experiences. "But imagine what we can save working together before things catch fire, literally and metaphorically." This newfound mission to foster readiness and mutual support became Ethan's focus. He started coordinating with teachers and local firefighters to organize informational sessions for students and families, using the experience at the Kelseys as an eye-opener rather than a tragedy. More than once, he was caught off guard by a realization, a whisper of a thought he slowly acknowledged as gratitude. Gratitude not for the fire, of course, but for the way adversity had forced a community to reflect and ultimately strengthen. Over time, the Kelseys had returned to the slowly rebuilt heart of the small neighborhood. Their house, freshly constructed, stood as a beacon of renewal and resilience. It reminded everyone that from ashes, reconstruction often emerged more robust. And Ethan, visiting the Kelseys during one of those bright afternoons filled with the scent of fresh timber and paint, felt something settle within himself. Standing in their new living room, with Sammy, a bit older now but no less vibrant, holding onto his leg, Ethan marveled at the growth forged from hardship. "Thank you, Ethan," Mrs. Kelsey said, placing a hand on his shoulder, her voice warm with sincerity. "For everything." Their connection transcended temporary narratives of heroism. Here was a human bond reinforced in adversity, a reminder of what mattered most. As Ethan left their house, the setting sun painted long shadows across the yard, yet there was an undeniable promise in the air. A promise of brighter days, of renewal not just in the physical space, but within those who shared this place and its spirit. Walking home, Ethan felt resolve burgeon within him, a deeper understanding of himself and the strength found in enduring support. He realized that true courage wasn't just about running into fires. It was about facing uncertainty, navigating the unknown tides, and coming together to shield what they cherished. Life, Ethan reflected, much like the frequently posed math problems, demanded both precision in the fundamentals and a degree of flexibility in navigating unexpected variables. And in bridging that gap, he found both his peace and his purpose. A purpose that resonated with the rhythms of their small town, a symphony composed of shared stories, lived experiences, and future aspirations. The transformation wasn't a conclusion, but rather an open path, a transition from one chapter of growth into the myriad possibilities that lay ahead. With each breath of crisp autumn air, he embraced this change, stepping into his community and life with an unencumbered heart.